proof that no matter what it is, no matter how difficult your life has been, you too can choose to heal, and you can use that pain as opposed to letting it cripple you. You can use that pain to really get you closer to your purpose. And I don't mean purpose in something you sit on the couch and like, oh, what's my purpose? But like actually moving towards, which I think what it all is contribution. How can you contribute? How can you serve? How can you show up in the world to just show people what's possible and that it's safe for them to do it too? And, so I've done a long journey. I've, made some poor relationship decisions along the way, and had a lot of healing to do. And that's really where the nonprofit came in. It's why it's called Heal Animal Rescue.
I love it.
Because we heal animals and we heal kids and humans that, we've rescued animals that have been adopted, and we've heard people say like, I wanted to kill myself, but I knew that if I did, my dog wouldn't get out today.
Oh, wow.
So it's so much bigger than us. And I feel that if I hadn't gone through what I went through as a child, if I hadn't had to figure all of that out and learn as I go and just find my own way, that I wouldn't have the heart that I have now for people, that I wouldn't, I don't want people to suffer, whether it's entrepreneurs or people that are, maybe not economically where they want to be, or any animal that's suffering. Like, I wouldn't have that same thing. So anyone that's going through something or has gone through something, imagine when you're through this and you're healed,
Nailed it.
who you can help and who you can serve through it. If you just sit on the couch and stay at home and wallow in that pain, you've missed the point.
You have. I cannot thank you enough for being willing to share that. And because I know how I don't have anything like that, but I also know how hard it is when you've become successful to then reveal parts of your life they can feel embarrassing, right? They can feel embarrassing. I know when I started to first talk about my dad and drinking and all that, like, it's kind of embarrassing, even still a little bit. And what you're sharing is 100 million times more difficult to share. So I just want to acknowledge your courage on it. And I don't know, when someone does it, I have this weird thing. I like picture the little girl I wish I could go back and hug her and tell her it's going to be okay, and then say, by the way, here's who you're going to become. Here's who you're going to become. And you're going to be sitting in a studio someday helping millions of people with this story. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But the thing you said that makes it okay, and this is the rub, your story isn't inspiring if you didn't come out the other side of it. The fact that you won, the fact that you persevered, the fact that you became something makes the story inspiring because it didn't define you. And so if you're sitting there and you've had some sort of a struggle, a divorce, a relationship, someone's lied to you, you've been cheated on, an injury, an illness, you've lost a family member, abuse, alcohol, sexual, whatever it might be, it's only inspiring if you win. Yeah. It's only inspiring if you come out of the other side of it and do something great with your life. And that's what you've done. And I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of people who go do something with their life, having to overcome things. And in our life, what's ever happened to you is major to you. It's major to you. And so, and those you go, I haven't really had anything happen. Then your ass sure as heck should be winning.
Right.
You sure as heck should be winning so you can go help people who are going through it. And this notion that Rory said on our show about you're most qualified and capable to help the person you used to be is such a powerful statement. It's why we want to change and we want to grow. All right, let's help them financially a little bit because this is your wheelhouse. I'm not going to have you on and not enough about the money pieces of things. So let's just go right to it. First of all, what would you teach children about money? Because I think a lot of adults who have an elementary understanding still of money, to no fault of their own. It's not taught in school. I learned geometry and algebra. I haven't used it since. Actually, I'm not even really sure I ever learned it. I'm pretty sure I cheated off Melissa Ramos's paper for 3 years. But aside from that, even had I learned it, I never used it since. Never. I would have loved some basic budgeting, like how to read a financial statement, some of that stuff. So what advice would you give to somebody? What would you teach your kids about money?
So I want to say one thing before we get into all of this, because like we shared, there's a lot of things, right? The accolades, the lists, the things that overcome. But I want to make sure everyone knows that there is nothing about my story. There is nothing about my journey. There's nothing that extraordinary. I wasn't that smart. I wasn't that connected. I just did a lot of ordinary things. So this isn't going to be some like life-changing innovation that we're going to, you know, charter a rover to Pluto. Like these are going to be very basic things that anyone can do. And I think that where the schools really miss are teaching basic fundamentals. And I mean, it could be as simple as like we were saying, don't take on bad debt. Yep. Don't buy the car because you can make the payment. Just because you can make the payment doesn't mean you can afford it. If you can't actually write a check for something, you cannot afford it.
Period.
But what people want to do is that they want to look like they can afford something, so they take the payment as opposed to writing a check for the car that they can actually afford.
Yep.
And so I think that's key. And our kids are only going to do what we do. They're not going to listen to what we say.
Yeah, caught, not taught.
Yes, caught, not taught, yes. Yep. So if you are telling them, hey, you don't want to take on bad debt and you don't want to live with beneath your means and you want to save and you want to give, but you're not actively doing those things, you're a hypocrite.
Right.
So it's like, first you got to be able to do these things and teach them to kids so that you can close the gap where the schools leave out. So a lot of it is, you know, I think one of the quickest things you could do for kids is if you give your kids anything, an allowance, or, you know, make sure that instead of just buying them the next thing, that you give them a way to budget their own money. Let's say instead of giving them, you know, we're just going to go buy your clothes, you say to them, you have $300 for school clothes. I don't care if you buy a $500 or a $150 pair of shoes and 2 shirts, or if you buy 14 shirts and pants, but you have $300 and I'm not giving you a dime more.
Great idea.
And you allow them to look at prices and figure out what they want and be able to go shop sales and maybe look on Amazon or online to find it cheaper. But oftentimes I see parents just shopping.
Very good.
So that's one quick lesson.
Shoot, I wish I would have done that. No, for real, that's great.
Right?
Okay.
And then it helps them if they ever want to build a business or just with their own family, how to budget money. Another one is my late friend Ann always did this with her 3 kids, and she actually came from money. So this is a really hard thing, I think, for people with money to even do. But she would have her kids, she would give them whatever their allowance was for the month, and they could only spend half. They had to invest 25%. They had to give 25%, then they could spend 50%. So what are you actually teaching your kids, right? We can say, oh, make sure that you donate, but if you're not actually framing it in a way that they can be successful, kids, I see it every day at the shelter, kids love to get involved in causes that they can see, you know, donating their birthday presents to a charity instead of just collecting more junk that's going to sit in a landmine year down the road is a great way. Getting them involved and helping and giving back. Like, you know, we didn't have a lot, of course, but I remember every Christmas going to Hills. Do you remember Hills department store? And they had a tree with little angels on it, and you could pull a kid's name off a tree.
Yep.
And I knew that meant I got one less gifts because we only had so much. But I remember that. I remember pulling the angels and giving the gifts far more than anything I ever got. And that's so important. And so I think some of those things are really, really key, making sure that...
You're totally wrong about one thing, where you said, like, what you're going to say isn't revolutionary or life-changing. That really was. Like, I've raised 2 great kids. I wish I'd have done both those things. Like, that's really a big deal. Teaching them how to... I mean, I want to go back through it. It was just... It's super good. It's really, really good. I get the feeling, well, I know, one of those businesses you made a lot of money in is real estate, right? And so if someone's listening to this, or like, I don't know what business to start. I've always sort of, I'm licensed, so I can't make any financial recommendations to people because I have to let you be the person to do that. But what would you say to somebody who says, you know what, I haven't really found, you know, that thing you said about the career earlier, that's not really, I'm a nurse, but I don't think I want to do nursing as my side thing. What would you, I think I know where you might go on that, but like, what would you say to them about an industry to at least take a look at where there might be some promise long term? So what I love about real estate investing is the barrier to entry. And people might think, well, no, is the barrier to entry high? If you're going to buy $1 million in stocks, you need $1 million. If you're going to buy $1 million property, you might only need $250,000 or $300,000, depending on your debt to income ratio and all those things we don't need to get into. But I just want to give the concept that you need less money to buy real estate. But if you're going to invest in a stock, you actually need that money. And if for any reason something happens in the market, guess what? Let's say you're on margin, they can do a call, and now all of a sudden you need to come up with that money. But the way that the government has structured loans for real estate, real assets, they can't do that. And you're locked in at a specific interest rate, typically,
for a long time. So I love real estate because it allows anybody to start to build wealth, because it's really hard to make money on 20 grand in the stock market. It's a long time. Not to say that you shouldn't be 100% maxing out your Roth IRA. You absolutely, if you have a business, should be looking at a 401k or a simple or a self-employed 401k to max all of your tax savings out. But for the average person, anyone listening here that hasn't bought a house yet, and maybe this will be your first purchase because you're renting, think about getting a first-time home buyer's loan, which is called FHA, as you know. 3.5%, a little bit more in fees. But
by the way, is what she's saying.
3.5% down, sorry. You can actually buy a duplex, a triplex.
Live in one and rent the other out.
It's the number one hack to build wealth.
First property I ever owned.
Get out.
First property I ever owned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought a $200,000 duplex. I lived in one side, I rented out the other.
Your living expenses are paid. Yeah. You stay there a year. Yeah. You fulfill your FHA loan requirements, which require you to stay there for a year. You put someone else there, rinse and repeat. Yeah. Most people want what has been pitched to us, which is the big house, the picket fence. If you will delay that sort of stuff, I promise you that you will be able to buy a bigger house with a bigger fence and more toys inside. But people want the now.
I promise you she's right. Let me just tell you, I'm sitting here right now. I can promise you, I started to play Little Monopoly so I could play Big Monopoly later in my life. Now, let's go to a couple things. People say, wait a minute. You both just said 15 minutes ago that debt is stupid. But there's two types of debt, everybody. So explain the difference. Just some people listen and go, I already know this part. Just listen.
Just listen anyways.
Right, just listen. Right.
We'll make it short. Right. Good debt is anything that can appreciate assets, businesses, right? Anything that's a good debt. And this is where there's a lot of conflict in the quote, thought leader space, because there's a difference between good and bad debt. Bad debt is anything that depreciates your car, your Louis bag, your shoes, your Rolex, your boat. Those are all depreciating assets. The second you buy them, they lose value. You're buying them at the highest price possible, and then they continually just depreciate until it's like, I look at this in 2001. I wanted to buy my dream car, which at the time was a Jeep Grand Cherokee. And it was, I think, $30-some thousand at the time. The house up the street was a foreclosure for $23,000. Guess which one I bought?
You bought the house.
And guess what that's worth now,
okay.
Right?
Yeah, right.
That Jeep's now worth, you probably couldn't even get $4,000 for that Jeep, a 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Yep. That house has cash flowed year after year after year for 20 years. And then when I flipped it, I was able to take that money and put it into another property.
Yeah. A lot of people are listening, they go, okay, that sounded really good earlier, that whole thing, like I could control the property, but I still need the $200,000-$300,000. I don't have that. The other thing about real estate, I'm not pitching real estate. She is, just to be clear, because I'm licensed. But the other thing is that sometimes you can control that entire piece of real estate with none of your own money. If you find an unbelievable property and find somebody with money who would put the 20% down, and you split profits together. So there's lots of ways to get creative, and it's an industry worth investigating. I think you wanted to say something on that, but I also, what if someone listens and goes, hey, but I could buy a house right now that would be depreciating because I might be buying at the top of the market. You just said there might be a recession. What if I pay $240 for that house? And this is valid.
Yeah.
And I could wake up in 2 years, because we've all seen this happen before, and it's worth $200. So obviously there's something to be said for being savvy and market analysis and everything else, but I think you should at least address that, because that's what someone's thinking listening to this.
100%. I hear this every day.
Yeah.
How long are you holding that property? Real estate is also playing the long game. If you're looking to buy a property and then flip it in 3 to 6 months, you better know what you're doing, or you could lose your butt in this market. Yep. But if your goal is to build a portfolio, to have investments, even if it's just a few, and you're 20 or 40 or 50 and you're planning to hold them until you retire, it doesn't matter if it drops 10, 20%, because again, like we talked in the beginning of the episode, no chart goes up forever. There's always dips. And the same thing in the real estate market. Even if you bought that property for $250 and it drops to $200, if you're collecting rent on it, who cares? When the market dries up and there isn't maybe as much people buying because of the interest rates are so high, guess what they're going to be doing? They're going to be renting. So there's going to be an influx of people renting. There has never been a time in the history of the United States that there hasn't been a need for rentals. So there, you will always, it's like it's having infinite demand, and there's only supply issues. They can't build them in certain areas. And I know there's people, oh, you can't even buy a house for $240,000. It's all in where you look. Yes, you're not going to in California or in Phoenix necessarily, but in little pockets of towns that are outside of, I could buy a house right now, tons of them for $100,000 back where I'm originally from. So they're available. And just remember that it's playing the long game.
Okay. I totally agree. I wish there were things we could debate here today because I really enjoy doing that, but there's nothing so far that I would debate with you. I agree with that. The other thing too, everybody, is that don't do a deal that you can't explain. In other words, I've bought, I think it's safe to say, hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate. And even I recently got taken advantage of by somebody in a couple of deals I did because I trusted the person and not the deal. And the person was not ethical at all, probably did some illegal things too. And so when you are going to invest money, my dad used to say this to me, if you can't explain it back to me, don't do it. And so if you can't explain it back to somebody, don't do it. Make sure you do your due diligence. Make sure you're careful about it. Okay, let's move over to life a little bit now, because I got you. We've done a lot of stuff on financial. We've moved around on that. Was it worth it? I want you to be real. You sacrificed some things. I didn't go to the club either. I didn't go to the club. We're a lot alike that when I met you, you're a serious person. You have a good time, but you're a serious person. Yeah. I love serious people because I have lots of friends who are really funny people, but they're more intentional about their life. My son's that way. He's very intentional about his life. He's a pretty serious guy. Has a good time. But when I met you, I immediately was impressed. I mean, like immediately. I'm talking within we met backstage at an event I was speaking for you at. It wasn't your biggest event ever. And you walked away about, 3 minutes later. Rarely do I say this upon first meeting somebody. I went, I'm impressed with her. You have a presence about you and a seriousness about your life that I relate to. A lot of people just aren't. You know exactly what I mean. It's why you're where you are. It's why you're where you are after 20 years. I mean, a lot of people are successful for 3 or 4 or 5 years. I want to say this to everybody listening to. I have more friends who used to be wealthy than currently are wealthy. So I've had a lot of friends get wealthy for a year, for 5 years, for 6 or 7 years. But what they were doing was more market driven, not habitually driven, like the habits we're talking about here. So you probably weren't at the club a lot. You probably didn't party a lot. I bet you lost friends over how successful you were. You can elaborate on that if I'm wrong. You lost friends over your focus, over your intensity, over you not wanting to be around clowns anymore, right?
100%.
And you missed a lot of things. Truthfully speaking, okay? Yeah. Was all that worth it? And if it wasn't, that's okay. But was it worth it? And did you lose friends and have those things I described? Because I think people need to know this is probably going to happen if you're going to do it.
It was 100% worth it. Okay. And I lost a lot of people along the way. Judged a lot of the way. Remember, in 1999, when I first started my business, I remember my mom saying, when I was about to graduate high school, do you want to be a teacher or a nurse? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, those were the two professions that even back then that a lot of women were going to. And I was like, well, those two professions, they work so hard. Like, we need great teachers and great nurses and we need more of them. But I was like, I am not really great with blood, so I don't know that that's going to be good. Or snot with kids. So but I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And so, starting a business when all of my friends were going to college, when, everyone at the time would walk into my first business and go, oh, hi, where's the owner? I was like, hi, it's me. Oh, no, is it your husband? Is it your brother? I dealt with that for years and years and years. And, any time that I wanted to do something big, it's like, oh, who does she think she is? What's she trying to prove? It was like I wasn't actually doing anything to prove to anyone other than to myself of what I'm capable of what I feel that God put inside me. And for so long, I downplayed it. I tried to minimize it because it wasn't accepted. And anytime, as you put your head out there, you try to stretch, there's going to be people that come along and try to take a whack. But here's what I want to know. Anyone that has fear of that, you got to understand two things. The only reason that someone will ever hate, gossip, or throw shade your way is because, one, something in you is triggering lack in them. And rather than them go fix whatever in their life that needs fixed, they would rather attack you because it's a heck of a lot easier. And the only other way, number 2, is you already have something that they want and consciously they know it. So it's an unconscious, intangible desire or a conscious, tangible desire. That's it. And rather than them going and doing all of it, because it's available to anyone listening can do anything that I just did. I don't have some, like some people are born really smart, right? Like Elon and they're just born smart. Yep. That's not my path. Like I just happened to do all of the things that were necessary and I didn't quit. And I was relentless and I was persistent. And even when it was like, well, you know what? Women are better to be seen than heard. Or, you know what? Guys don't like to be with strong women. All of the things that I had heard for so long, so it made me try to be smaller, play. And it was like inner civil war. Because when you are not being congruent with who you're really created to be, it will feel like this war that's going on inside of you. And I guarantee there's somebody listening that understands that. And I just want you to know that that is the physical feeling of you not going after what you darn well know that you should be.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you did it again. You just did one of these things I wish that was the beginning of the interview, what you just said. I hope you're all still here right now, because that was one of the things that made me the most emotional about what I've been blessed to have with this following the last 8 years, whatever it is oh wow, it got me right there. Sorry. Is the amount of women who want to be somebody in this world right now. And like, sorry. There's just millions, and like, they work so hard. I have 12, 13-year-old little girls who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs. Not all of them now want to just be, what they were when I was. They had to be an actress or an athlete they want to be entrepreneurs. They want to give. They want to create. They want to contribute. They want to win for their family. All the way up to I have 75 years. I have millions of women who follow my work and follow the show that you're speaking to right now. There isn't just one. And they have a little bit of that. Or they come from a family where there isn't been one yet.
Yeah.
Right? And it just, it moves me. Like I have thousands of messages a day. And so many of them are women like, I want to win, and they're in different businesses, or they're trying network marketing, or they're trying real estate, or they've started something. And it's like there is a tsunami of women coming in this world that are entrepreneurs. And I don't play the gender game. People are people. But I got to tell you, it's inspiring to see the face of change in the world today. And I don't think it's just women. I think there's people from if you come from a certain family background and everyone's always just sort of worked with their hands, and you're going to decide, I'm going to work with my mind, or the reverse.
Right.
Everyone's always worked with their minds. You're like, I love construction, or I love building things. So what you just said is huge. It's huge. And we need more examples. We need more people stepping out. And it leads to one of the questions I was dying to ask you after I met you. Because the other thing I saw in you, because I see it in me, I'm very serious. One of the reasons I'm very serious is probably when I was young, it was a mask for my lack of confidence. If I can come across very professional, very serious, they won't notice that I'm not that smart, at least in my own mind. They won't notice that I'm this young. They won't notice that I'm not yet successful yet. And so that was a little bit of a mask for me and my confidence. What about you? What have you done? Have you struggled with your self-confidence? And what did you do to build it?
That's a great question. So I feel that a lot of women struggle with being self-conscious. We're constantly being thrown images that we don't look like. We're constantly being thrown pictures of what we should want. And when what you want doesn't line up with those pictures, you start to think that something's wrong with you. And that is something I've struggled with because, everybody wanted the degree and the family and the 4 kids and a minivan. And that wasn't something that I genuinely wanted. And because of that, people often thought I was missing something, or that something was broken inside of me that then I would start to think about was broken inside of me. But confidence is like a muscle. It's like going into the gym and picking up that first 5-pound weight. You got to do that before you're ever going to curl a 50. And so for me, it's taking the steps forward in fear, no matter what. And then it's just like I shared earlier, reviewing the data. Like, look at what you've accomplished to this point. Really, so that when you're self-conscious about this next thing that you've never done, go back to that list and see what you've done, what you've overcome, how you've raised a child and you had no clue, how you got through that abusive relationship. Remember who you are and what you did so that you know this next thing, you're going to get through it too. Like, now I have the data so that anything I want to do, I have a greater chance of being successful because there's proof that someone else has done it, even if I haven't yet. And anyone listening that's like, I want to be something, you already are. You got to give yourself permission to get there. Like, you are the one. If someone is like, I'm not there yet. No, you actually are. It's just that your actions don't meet your reality. And you have to get clear of giving yourself permission to take the step forward. Because if you don't, you will never develop that muscle of confidence. There is proof everywhere. If somebody wants to build the biggest company or create a bunch of wealth or whatever it is, there is someone that's already done it. So there is more data that you'll be successful at this than there is that you'll fail. And so that's what I always hang my hat on. That's what I always look towards. If I can see that someone else has done it, why can't I?
Yeah.
And rather, most people will look and say, oh, so-and-so did that. I don't know how I can do that. And if you continue to ask yourself crappy questions, you're going to continue to get crappy answers.
Yeah.
Ask better questions. What am I missing? How can I do this? Who can help me? Where can I find the answers? Your brain, as you know, it processes all of the stuff that we ask it. Ask better questions and your life will drastically change.
You're so right. Everything, yes. The quality of your life is the quality of the questions you ask yourself. People say, I need to change how I think. Thinking is the process of asking and answering questions to yourself. The way you change a thought is you ask a different question, which produces a different answer. You have a different thought. And you don't have to believe everything you think. We all think crazy crap all the time.
All the time.
I think crazy things, insecure thoughts all the time that are totally not true.
And you can do all the things that we're talking about. And still, walking in here, I'm like, okay, what's the lighting going to be like? Or how many wrinkles are they going to see? Right? Like, so we still think all of that. But it's a choice to continue to get better.
I did the same thing before you walked in. I said, can you guys turn the lights down? I'm 51. Let's throw a filter on this sucker.
I know, right?
The exact same
thing.
Oh,
my God.
You, on the other hand, don't have to worry about any of that. That is like literally a crazy belief for you. All right, this has been so good, but I want to ask you one last question. Like, I can just feel people, they're like, wow, I got financial stuff, I got life stuff, I got overcoming abuse stuff, I got inspirational stuff, I got tactics, I like this Roth IRA thing, I should look into the real estate, I should be scaling my business, I don't want to be employed, I want to be a business owner. Like, we got some stuff in here today, which I knew we would. So if we just stepped back, we go, okay, let's go big here. Let's look at the big picture right now. And I'm driving right now and I'm pretty darn fired up or inspired. Or I'm on the treadmill and I'm running at like level 10 and I was at 2 when this thing started, right? And I go, you know what? There's just an area of change I want. I already am an entrepreneur, but I want to be happier. Or I am an employee and I want to be an entrepreneur. Or I don't have a good, whatever it is. I got something I want to change in my life. Because you've clearly changed your life.
Yeah.
That's what you've done. You've changed your life. You're the one. You know, I always talk about the one. You're the one in your family. You've changed it forever. Your family will never be exactly the same because of you. That 19-year-old girl driving around who's like, can I meet the owner? Turns out she was the owner, right? And so you've changed your family forever. If someone's listening to this, they just go, yeah, I mean, you guys have covered a lot today. In addition to what you've covered, if you could give me one piece of advice, would it be find a mentor? Would it be read a book? Would it be start a business? Would it be whatever it was? Anything you haven't said, what would you add to the recipe that you've already given us today as one last thing to change their life?
Decide. You got to decide. People waffle. People say they want something, but then the proof is actually there that they don't. Because the decisions that they're making, the actions that they're taking, the things that they're doing don't align with what they say they want. What do you really want? And are you willing to